it is important for us to not forget the shoulders that we're on. So I'd just like to take a second of silence for her. I also want to really appreciate the strong community support for Portland Street Response. We did not develop Portland Street Response quickly. We developed Portland Street Response very intentionally, starting with the people who would be most impacted, our houseless community members. We made sure that we had focus groups with Portland Police Bureau. We had conversations with the medical director who has to sign off on the appropriate calls for Portland Street Response to take. I plan to submit an amendment to fully fund Portland Street Response as we promised the public when we started this journey. It is still temporary employees will be employed to do the work. But I've heard clearly everywhere I go how much every single community wants Portland Street Response. And this will be a journey. This will not be the destination. This is simply the pilot. I also want to acknowledge the displacement of food carts when we built another hotel downtown. And I want to thank my colleagues for stepping up and working collaboratively to make sure that we could provide the resources necessary for Ankeny food carts to be able to operate this summer. I am so excited about this partnership, and I think it's going to be really good for all of us. I also want to say that I heard loud and clear from community that some of our budget today gives them hope and some does not. I want to be clear, the mayor, and I believe the rest of my colleagues, but if I'm wrong, please forgive me, support a truth and reconciliation process. There will be an amendment coming that will fund it to make sure we can start that work. Because of you, we passed a voter initiative that will create the first of its kind police oversight board. And we have staffed it through this budget. And we will make sure that we start seating that committee so they can start the work of listening to you as we continue to build that new system. It didn't take us only a year or two or three to create the system that we have, and it won't take us a year, two, or three to totally transform it. We are still under a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and we must get back into compliance prior to our transformation. I can assure you, all hands are on deck. I am committed, and I believe my colleagues are committed to building a more just, fair, and transparent city as we all collectively work to get out of this pandemic and back to some sense of economic security. Thank you all again for being here. Thank you, Jessica Kennard, the budget director, and all your staff. And thank you, colleagues. We've got some hard decisions over the next week, but I am confident we have the right people at the right time to make the right decisions about this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Commissioner Mapps.
Thank you very much. Like my colleagues, I want to start out by thanking everyone who took time out of their evening to testify about this proposed budget. I learned a lot, and I think what I'd like to do right now is share what I heard. Obviously, the lion's share of the testimony that we heard today focused in on issues surrounding policing and the Portland street response teams. By my count, roughly 20 people directly called for decreasing funding to the police bureau. Obviously, and I'd say the second largest group of testimony, but it's clearly related, Bruce deals with support for expanding the Portland Street Response Team pilot. Although much of the testimony, especially in the Portland Street Response Team, was passionate, I think there's a lot of consensus amongst everyone in this room. We're deeply hopeful about this program. I think everyone on this council thinks that this program is the future of community safety in our city. If there is any disagreement, I think it's more about the timelines for which we expanded and the benchmarks that we need to meet in order to expand this program. And I look forward to the discussion both around the size of our police department and the future of the Portland Street Response Team, which I expect to be bright. And I also want to thank those who came out tonight to talk about some less high profile issues, but frankly, these are all issues I'm really excited about. And I'd like to thank the mayor for putting it in his budget. Deeply moved by all the stories from folks who are excited about Ankeny West food cart pod. It's about time that we got this fixed, and I think it's going to be a key development to helping reactivate downtown. Also, I'd like to thank the mayor for his support for the minority chambers of commerce. I think that's an important program which will help expand the economic base and wealth, especially in our minority communities. I heard loud and clear the excitement from the Portland, our advocates and people who are excited about the Portland Parks Foundation and the possibilities, the new funding, which are tucked in that budget. As a guy who up until recently spent a lot of time working in our small business districts, the testimony on behalf of Venture Portland about the important work that is there to be done in our business districts resonated to me. Also very much appreciated hearing the powerful testimony in favor of trans services. Thank you for everyone who came out to underscore how important that was. It's not my assignment, but sometimes I wish it were. It was great to hear from RAC about the important role that arts play both in our culture and our economy. I'd like to thank the mayor for funding that program. And we didn't get a lot of testimony on this, but the testimony we did get really resonated with me. In particular, I'd like to thank Angie, who came out tonight to emphasize the role that the Office of Community Technology plays in helping shrink the digital divide. If there's any lesson that to be learned from, or I should say, one of the lessons that we certainly learned in the last year is the profound importance of making sure that all Portlanders, and especially all kids, have access to computers and internet access. And I also, finally, I want to let my colleague Frida know that I heard her pleas about making sure that we take steps to help East Portland fight displacement, especially in these turbulent economic times. Now, that's a lot of stuff to think about, and I'll be thinking about it personally and chatting about it with my staff and my colleagues. I certainly have received a lot of information to process. I want to thank everyone who took time out of their day today to share your ideas with me, and I look forward to continuing this conversation in the future.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to Mayor Wheeler.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Thanks everybody who testified. Jen, thank you for your, once again, outstanding facilitation. Jessica Kennard in the budget office, thank you for doing the weeks and weeks and weeks of work that get us through the budget process. And of course, we're really at the first stage, the release of the proposed budget. I really do hope that people take the time to go online and peruse it and look at it. A lot of the things that people were interested in are actually supported in the budget. So I would encourage people to maybe take a little bit more time if they have it and have that inclination to take a good hard look at it. Tonight focused largely on the questions of public safety. And I want to be clear, I do hear what people are saying. I sort of think of three different areas of investments that are important when it comes to public safety. The first is where police are needed, give them adequate support and resources to be effective in their job. And that means the tools, the training, and the analytical support that they need to do their jobs the right way. The second area of investments is in the areas where police are not needed. In areas where police are not needed, the attempt of the proposed budget was to support successful alternatives. And that includes the tripling of the public safety support specialist program. That's the unarmed officers who can go out and work with people in the community on a non-emergency basis. And of course, the lion's share of the commentary we heard tonight were people who are activated for a full deployment of the Portland Street response. I want to be very clear. I am a strong proponent of the Portland Street response. I have been since the very beginning. We as a council decided that we would start the Portland Street response with a pilot. That pilot has now been underway for 2 months, and the proposed budget fully funded that pilot. Now, I think there's strong interest on the part of the council to have a thorough discussion about whether we want to accelerate that or not. Just by virtue of the fact that it is not funded in the proposed budget doesn't mean that's where the council is going to land. And so I want to hear from my colleagues what their thinking is on that and what their intentions are. But I want you to know that when I funded the pilot completely, that was the benchmark that we had established as a council, and I funded to that benchmark. If we want to be more aggressive and we want to further expand beyond that, I'm certainly open to the conversation. The third area is around a commitment to reform. And we heard a number of people say they don't trust me or they don't like me or they want me to resign, that we haven't moved quickly enough as a city council on the issue of reform. I want to tell you, this council is very committed. We want our police bureau to be the most effective, responsive, and accountable police bureau in the United States. And to do that, it takes resources, it takes time, and yes, it requires evolution of the way that the police bureau does its work. And I support that along with my colleagues, and this budget reflects that as well. The accountability system that we referred to the voters last November, which was overwhelmingly supported by the people of this city, requires a well-funded committee to help launch that process. That is fully funded in this budget, as is the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. And I've been in this chair long enough to remember some of the people who are here tonight vociferously opposing that proposal, thinking, oh, they're going to be tools of the mayor's office. They're not going to be accountable or responsive to the public. They'll just be an extension of the wishes of the mayor. And those of you who follow the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing closely know it's anything but. It is extremely independent. It is very reform-minded. They have made numerous, I think, outstanding proposals that have been accepted. They are making a true difference, and those are community-generated reforms that then come forward for action by the City Council. So I want to thank the folks who continue to serve on the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. And again, my intention there was to fully fund it. There's many other issues here. We heard about small business support, particularly supporting our minority men and women business owners and operators. For me, that was easy to support. I'm appreciative of the fact that the Fire Bureau is appreciative that their rapid response vehicles and their fire stations were fully funded. If this COVID crisis has taught us anything, it is that we as a community need to be prepared and resilient for any inevitability. The Ankeny Food Cards project is actually one of the smaller line items in the budget, but it is one of the most interesting ones. And I'm glad that we were able to work, all of my colleagues work in partnership with the folks who are the proponents of that food cart pod. It's going to be exciting to have that back again. And I heard loudly and clearly the refrain, invest in people, invest in community. And I hope at the end of the day, that's what all of our budgets do, that we prioritize people, that we prioritize community. And I'll just end by saying this. We as a council agreed on our top priorities, and this budget was based on the 3 priorities that we established. And that was community safety, homelessness, and economic recovery. And it was my intention to tailor this proposed budget very closely to those 3 priorities that were established collaboratively by this city council. And I believe it was close to the mark. But over the coming weeks, we'll hear alternatives, we'll hear different proposals, we'll hear amendments. So the process is far from done. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight to help shape that process. And so I have some formal language, Commissioner Mapps, and then I'll close this out here. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's been a long evening for everybody, but before we go, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone on City Council by expressing our thanks to our ALS interpreters tonight, Zach, and everyone else who sort of ran the show today. You did an amazing job. That's all.
Very good. So this meeting of the Budget Committee is continued to Thursday, May.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Mayor Wheeler. I just, part of the agenda is for me to make a brief announcement about our next
Okay,
steps,
you cue me when it's the right time and I'll jump.
Okay, great. So just, I'll break in just really quickly just to give you a reiteration of our next steps. We have one more upcoming budget listening session and hearing, which will be Thursday, May 13th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that is the approved budget hearing testimony. In the meantime, again, if you have any online testimony that you'd like to submit, you can do that at portlandoregon.gov/CBO. You can also email testimony at any time to budgetcomment@portlandoregon.gov. And all of that budget testimony will be submitted to council offices. So thank you for that brief announcement. And then Mayor Wheeler, if you could conclude our evening. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This meeting of the Budget Committee is continued to Thursday, May 13th at 2 p.m., where the committee will consider the approved budget. Due to the COVID-19 public health crisis, the meeting will be conducted virtually and will live stream on the City Council YouTube channel. Public comment and testimony may be provided by signing up to testify in advance via portlandoregon.gov/auditor. Thank you all for your participation tonight. We are adjourned.